So, how did you two meet?
The first time I can remember seeing him was we double dated, but we were each with somebody else.
You each brought a separate date and then decided to ditch your dates?
No, we were double dating that night, and then I guess that was maybe 3 years, 2 years before we dated again.
Before we dated, you mean?
Yeah.
So then how did you guys, 2-3 years later, decide to date?
Well, I suppose I'll have to say then 2 years or 3 years, I was, running around free, footloose and fancy free and everything. And then one day I was in town, and this was towards spring, pretty close to the end of the school year, And I don't know who she was with, but anyway, she was with somebody else across the street, and I just walked over and I asked her for a date.
And how old were each of you when this happened?
I was 19.
I would have been 24, I suppose, because we didn't date a year, did we?
No.
No. So that must have been in March, April, maybe beginning close to May or something like that. And then, of course, in September we got married. Couldn't wait any longer,
Where did you go for your date? What did you guys do?
The first date I had with her, we didn't have telephone. That's the funny thing. We didn't have telephone. They did, but we didn't. They lived south I lived 11 miles south of town, and she lived 15 miles south of town. And I don't remember how we got together, but anyway, another friend of mine, his girlfriend was working in Jamestown, and we were real close friends, And anyway, I don't remember how it was, but anyway, he was going to go to Jamestown that Saturday night, and I had a date with her on Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
That same Saturday night.
Yeah.
But anyway, we wanted to go early, and I don't know how the heck we got that organized. But anyway, I went and I picked her up, and then we got back to where my friend lived. And this friend of mine happened to be, his sister was married to my brother. But anyway, we went to Jamestown, the three of us, And we picked up his girlfriend and went to a movie. We didn't have no money, And I don't know, truthfully, I can't say that we had lunch or anything like that, did we?
No, I don't think so.
I probably had popcorn, at the movie. But anyway, we were parking, smooching, This guy had a 48 Ford, two-door. We sat in the back seat and they were in the front seat. And there we sat and talked and visited and whatever, Then I know it was after midnight. It was time to go home, The car wouldn't start. And that was no excuse. I mean, that battery was dead. They played the radio and the battery was dead, So, what do we do? Where are we going to find somebody? Everything is closed, and I mean, where are we going to find somebody? What are we going to do? And I said, well, all we can do, I said, if you got a jack, we'll jack the car up, And I'll turn the wheel, start it. And he said, you're crazy. What's the matter with you? And I said, well, you got a better idea. No. Okay, I said. So we jacked the car up, and I told him put it in high gear, and when I turned that wheel and that car starts, motor starts, you better hit the clutch, because if she drops, she'll be gone. And we did. Started right off, So, went back to his place. He dropped his girl off, and then we went back to his place where my car was, and then I took her home, and that was 5 o'clock in the morning.
How'd you explain that one to her parents?
I don't know. I have never heard what her dads or folks said, where were you so long? What were you doing? And all that. Never heard. But anyway, that's the way it was then. And then one time I went down there, and here there was another guy there. Of course, he had tried before, I guess, this other guy. But anyway, I had no idea what was going on. I just had thought he was down there to see her brother, you know. Well, actually, he was down to see her, you know, which I didn't realize, you know, I never gave it a thought, you know. So anyway, I guess when everything was all in and done, her mother told her where to get off at. Either you make up your mind, one or the other. That's what she told me. So anyway, the best man won. And that's the way it kept going. Then after school, she graduated, and then she went to Aberdeen. She worked in a cafe. And of course, Norman had to go down to all the way to Aberdeen, you know, once or twice a week, I guess. Well, then finally we got a telephone. We got, you know, my folks finally got telephones, so then we could correspond that way.
So what did you have to explain to your parents about coming home at 5 in the morning after a date?
Well, I guess I just told them what happened, and nothing more was said. So, but,
So then, when did you propose to her? About 4 or 5 months after you started dating, or?
Jeepers. I didn't write it down.
no, we'd only been dating maybe 3-4 months when he proposed. And that was even before I went to Aberdeen to work. And,
No, well, when we got engaged, then you were in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Then we come to Column, and of course she had to show her, you know, her friend that she got a boyfriend.
How did he propose to you?
Well, we were sitting in the car at the house where I was staying at the time, and saying good night, and come around about way he didn't want to say good night anymore. Then he just asked me to marry him. So.
Did he kiss you good night?
No, he didn't.
He didn't.
He was too overjoyed that he now had a fiance.
That'll be 51 years ago.
Wow. Where'd you guys get married at then?
Right here in town. Church right up here.
At the Methodist church up here.
What was the wedding ceremony like?
Simple, I guess. Just had the family, you know.
No, there was friends there.
Well, friends, yeah, but I mean,
Family
it
and
was not,
friends,
you know, not a big deal.
we had 2 attendants. My 2 sisters were my attendants. His brother and my brother were his attendants. And a simple ceremony. My youngest sister sang for us at the wedding. My girlfriend was pianist. And then we had a reception downstairs afterwards, which was sandwiches and ice cream and cake, which was the menu in those days.
So did you get married in the morning, or was it in the afternoon?
Late afternoon.
Evening.
Or middle afternoon or something. Late afternoon, yeah.
So.
Who would have cooked for the wedding?
The family did. We made up the sandwiches, and my sister-in-law had worked at a bakery at one time, so she made the wedding cake.
Who's that?
Agnes.
Oh.
And so it was all done within. The family did it.
Did you guys have a dance or anything?
No.
Did you guys go on a honeymoon?
Yes, we did. We went to the Black Hills. And then we visited some relatives at Mobridge, South Dakota, and then we went out to Minneapolis for a week. So,
Not Mobridge, Timberlake.
So.
We didn't visit anybody in Mobridge at that time, did we? We stayed at Godford's,
Yeah.
Timberlake.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we went to Aberdeen. From Timberlake, from Mobridge to Aberdeen. Then we went visiting some friends that she had worked with that evening. And next morning we left and we never did pay for that hotel room. Boy, I don't
Oops.
know. I don't, I mean, you just. Anyway, then went to Minneapolis, and of course she had two brothers down there and a sister. And spent a week down there. Come home and went back to work.
Did you go back to work on your parents' farm, or did you
We,
guys have
we
your...
stayed with my parents for a year. And like I said before, I was the black sheep of the family, and I had worked and tried to get everything done before we got married, and I knew, So anyway, 2 weeks later I come home and there was still work to be done, which I had to do.
What was it like living with your parents for the first year?
It was hard. His parents were easy to live with, but you've got adjustments to make, and with, let's see, there were 4 younger brothers at home, right?
1, 2,
And
3, 5.
and so it was.
Well,
It
Bill,
was.
wait a minute, yeah.
It was.
I'd say
It was an
5.
adjustment, and it was hard.
Yeah, even if they're easy to live with, there probably would be difficulties.
Yeah.
So did you just help around the farm, or did you have a job in town?
No, I just helped around the farm and the house, and of course there weren't any other girls at home, so I'm sure his mother welcomed the extra hand in the house, which was fine, and I did. If they needed help outside, which wasn't very often, but we milked our own cows, so we had our own chores to do and so on too. So
Have any other stories about your courtship or your wedding that you guys would like to share?
well, it was kind of funny the first argument we ever had, and I'm the type of, I won't talk then, so we weren't on speaking terms. And who would come to visit us for the first time? Our pastor. And so it was hunky-dory while the pastor was there, and I guess my husband found out when the pastor left, she still didn't talk.
And then she was so stubborn like her dad. Her dad was a real stubborn man. And she was too, still is. So anyway, we were going someplace that night with the folks, or we must have been going with the folks. But anyway, she wasn't going to go. Or I don't know if she didn't go either. But anyway, she didn't luck out too well. And I don't know why, but anyway, there was still water in the bathtub from the night before, and then I picked her up and set her in the bathtub with her clothes on. That's when she found out who's boss.
Oh,
That wasn't very funny on her part.
I can't believe you did that.
Man, I don't know, was it at that time or not, but anyway, Dad, I was down in the basement laying on the sofa, and Dad come downstairs, and then he said in Germany, what's the matter? He said, you married each other or something like that. I don't know what I answered him, and then he said, oh, that'll get better again. For some reason it did, because it's been will be 51 years come September. So I guess it hasn't been all bad. Hasn't been all good either. But
Do you remember that being put in the tub of water?
Oh, yes.
you know what, tell her what you called me.
Any number of choice words?
Huh?
Is it any number of things?
No, it's just one word. Or two, or whatever you call it. But anyway, my mother was religious. And so was my dad, because Dad used to teach Sunday school in German, Lutheran church. But he'd have his ways, My mother was a religious woman. She believed in Jesus Christ and everything, all that. And like she said, her mother was really, really strict. I mean, you couldn't even tell stories and laugh about it because she'd shut you up. That wasn't, you know. But anyway, she called me a son of a bitch.
You had to say it, didn't you?
Well, you didn't remember.
I remembered.
She just didn't want to say it.
Anyway.
Well, let's do some wrap-up questions about each of your childhoods. We'll start with you. What was your most stressful childhood experience that you remember?
Gosh. No, I can't really think of anything that was really stressful. I think the summer that my mother, I must have only been probably 13, 14 years old, and my mother had some big surgeries, and I was responsible for the household things and the washing and the meals and so forth and so on. And there were some experiences that were kind of hard. My sister and I, of course, mother, you always had pies at Sunday dinner, so Saturday come, we were going to bake pies. Our first pie crust landed out in the wheat field. Mother didn't have recipes that we could follow, for making pie crusts and things, so it was always by guess and by gosh with these things. And when she wasn't there, so we decided we wouldn't have pie on Sunday. And then when Mother got home, she insisted that we bake the bread, and there was a large family. There must have been 8 or 9 of us at home at the time, and of course we had a bread dough thing about this big around, and learning to make the bread and having the responsibilities that a 13, 14-year-old for the family, that was made you grow up very fast, and it was hard. So.
Same question for you. What was the most stressful thing?
When I lost my 17-year-old brother. That I can remember back, that was, and I still don't understand. I remember everything up to that point, and from there on I don't know. But anyway, like I said, we were together a lot. His name was Tedor. We called him Teddy all the time. We were together all the time. We made wagons and pony carts and stole money and from my dad's billfold. Oh man. But anyway, we were all home, except the 2 girls weren't home. Both sisters weren't home, and my oldest brother wasn't home at the time. I don't think. Maybe he was. Anyway, and we had a bunch of cattle that we were feeding, get them fed up, to be sold in January. And my sister was home, and she wanted us to come to Minneapolis. So then the people that used to own the clothing store here in town, they were going to Minneapolis, and they said, yeah, sure, me and Clifford can ride along, So we went to Minneapolis. And of course, Tater, my brother, was at home with my dad. And then my other brother was younger than Tater. Bill is his name. He's out in California. Where?
Bakersfield.
Bakersfield. Anyway, we went out there, and I don't know, we was there for a couple of days. And when we come home, then we found out that my brother was sick. He just weak, and everything. So anyway, then they took him to Jamestown to the doctor, and of course they found out he had leukemia. So then he was in the hospital for 3 weeks. And I forget how many people we had to take up for blood donation, somewhere in the neighborhood of 35, 40 that we had to take up. Not all of them could donate, but anyway. So after 3 weeks, they told the folks, there's nothing they can do at that time. So then 3 weeks later, he was gone. And remember, as if it was last night, we had company for supper, and that had been the first time that he come and he said to Ma, he says, I'm hungry, And Ma said, well, we'll have supper. And like I say, we had company. I know who it was too. But anyway, they left, and of course we went to bed, and we stepped upstairs. Theodore and Clifford and I, we slept in the south room upstairs. And the younger boys, I don't know where they slept anymore, I don't remember. But anyway, during the night or in the morning, he got really sick, you know. And of course, Dad, what I can remember, he knew, you know, more so that the time was coming, you know. So anyway, I don't know what happened, but anyway, Dad come upstairs, and then he took him from where we were sleeping and took him in the other room, where just a bed alone, you know. And Dad talked to him and asked him and told him, you know, and how things were going to, what was going to happen. And he said, and this I remember, he says, oh no, he says, I'm going to be okay. I'll be, you know. So and then we got up, went out and done chores. And I don't know if Dad had been out to do chores or not. I don't think so. But anyway, maybe he did help milk. Dad did, you know. But anyway, then we went in for breakfast. And then after breakfast, then I know Dad didn't come out. But Clifford and I, we cleaned the barn. Got the horses and the manure wagon, you know, cleaned the barn and hauled it out, unloaded it, and then put a bunch of straw on the wagon and brought it in the barn, and then Dad called. Here we go again. So anyway, that's when it happened. So then we had to go to town, Clifford and I, we had to go to town and get the doctor, and by the time we got back out, it was over with. And then they got him. The undertakers got him in a basket. That, oh God! But anyway, now my sisters tell me that after they had him in the coffin and everything, they brought him out to the house, to the farm. And I do not remember that. I do not remember seeing that coffin out in the house. When my little brother died, he was only about in a coffin about this big, you know. And he died. He only was a couple of hours old yet, you know. That they brought out in the coffin. That I remember. But Theodore, and they tell me that I blocked that out of my mind, you know. I don't know. But anyway, that was in December of '49. In fact, I think the funeral was on the 24th of December. Snow, the roads were blocked. No equipment, you know, to where they use the horses and whatnot, all they get, you know, out to the farm and in and stuff like that. So that was my worst nightmare. Never got over it either. Well, when we lost our son, that was another bad one. But then,
Well, shifting to a lighter note to ending on, we're getting closer to ending. What's your favorite or happiest memory from your childhood? Or your favorite experience?
who are you talking to, her or me?
Who wants to start it first?
Jeepers, there was so many of them that
I think one of my favorite ones to remember is there was 12 of us, like I said, 12 of us children, and the first time the 12 children were together, and I was either a junior, to tell you how this, I was either a sophomore or junior in high school when this took place, when the first time the family, all 12 children were together for the first time. So that was quite. And then my dad on Saturday evenings, some of them were married and had children, but my dad said on Saturday evenings, I'm taking my 12 children out for supper. And we did. Some of the spouses didn't think that was right, but to me it was really a special thing to have all 12 sisters and brothers together. And that only happened 3 or 4 times in the whole
he was
life.
married?
No.
Well, you guys were all together and didn't have us outlaws with you. They left us out in the farm and they all went to town. On her side, you know, family. Just that was for family reunion.
Yeah.
You know.
that would be neat to finally get all 12 together.
Yeah.
See that. Well, how about you, Norman? What's your happiest or favorite memory?
Well, before you asked, and then, I didn't know what I should say, but I just had time to think a little bit. Christmas. That was a favorite, really favorite time. We always had gifts, and then Ma would save her cream money, selling cream, save her money. And then at Christmas time she would buy nuts and candy, and of course she baked fruit cake and kuchen, coffee cake and stuff like that, And then, like I say, after Christmas or Christmas Eve or whatever, we'd have our gifts and all that, and then every so often, then after supper, probably around a bit before bedtime anyway, then she'd get all this stuff out, the peanuts and nuts and fruit cake, and my aunt from California, she'd send us dates and just all kinds of stuff, That was, oh man, that was great. And once she died, my aunt died, that was my favorite aunt and my mother's favorite sister. Then that come to a screeching halt, I mean, the rest of them didn't care anymore. But that was great. That was, the whole family together then, and we had all these goodies, I mean, that was just great.
Why do you think it's important to share your life story?
Why?
Yeah.
There's so many different answers to that one, I guess. I mean, there were good times and bad times, and you remember the good times more so, So, I don't know.
Well, I think it's important simply for the history of things, because there's so many things I'd like to know about my grandparents, when they come over to this country, and what their life was like before they come over and after they come over. And that's things we'll never know. And if it would have been put down in history, we could go back and find out about it. So I think just knowing what their lives would have been like would have been really interesting and important to know.
Is there anything else that you guys would like to share? Any other thoughts or observations?
Well, there's another thing that I never got over it, and I still don't know. But anyway, when my mother's folks come, and I don't know where they landed, but anyway, as far as
Ellis
I know,
Island.
they, stayed here in Cullum, lived here in town. And then my grandfather's brother come through here, through Cullum here. I don't know how long they was here, and I don't remember him, but I just hear that from hearsay, And that must have been probably before me, whatever. But anyway, then he kept on going, and they went into Canada. Okay. And all we ever heard was my mother would say, she's got relations in Canada. That's all. We didn't know if it was her uncle or brother, or no, I knew it wasn't her brother. It was her uncle or something like that. Well, it was her dad's brother. I forget his name now. I knew it too. But anyway, that was the end of that. And up until here, maybe in the 70s, is when one of, would have been my mother's uncle's son, he started, starting a family tree. And then he got into the quarters, and he was out here, the farm, and took history, and stuff like that. And then when the folks was in California, he was there to see them. And all we knew about that he would have been my mother's cousin. Yeah. And anyway, then he come to Fargo one time when the folks lived in Fargo, and got some more information and stuff like that. And then after the folks passed away and everything, then he come back. He come back and he wanted some more information. And then he got a hold of some people's that their last name was Ratke too, but they were not related to my mother's side at all, And it happened to be this one guy, still my friend, lives right here in town, and then he started remembering, that my mother's folks' name was Ratke, So anyway, then he told them, and then he wrote us a letter and wanted information, and we gave him what we knew. And like I say, I talked to my sister, then my oldest sister, and she said, he's wishy-washy. I mean, if he didn't get all the information he needed for my mother being with my mother for 3 times, how am I supposed to know? Because we didn't correspond with my folks or my mother with, their kind of history at that time. But anyway, what really threw us off was that he was a born Radke, but he changed his name to Spears. Know why he ever done that, we have no idea. His name is Brian Spears, and that's what he went by, and yet he was a born Radke. So why that ever took place, we have no idea. And we don't know if there was any more, that Radke family had any more boys, any more kids than this Brian, I mean. And like I say, there was even relations over here, between here and Lair and Wishick someplace, that would have been related to my mother, because my mother's mother was a Buchholz, and there was Buchholzes over here, and the closest we could ever find out was that this Buchholz was Emmanuel, his name was Emmanuel, and they could have been like maybe second cousins. Now their kids, some of them, there's a whole bunch of them on that side too, and one of their daughters lives right here in town, and she and her husband are real good friends with my brother in Fargo. But as far as I know, to the best of my knowledge, she does not recognize us as a relation, which could have been, her dad and my mother would have been second cousins, that would have made these kids, third cousin, fourth cousin, removed or whatever, I don't know. But one of the boys, or if there are 2 of the boys on that side, they do recognize me as a relation. But I mean, we don't really correspond a whole lot. But I mean, when we ever do get together, this one especially, and his name is Ralph. And whenever, we get together someplace or something to do, he will say, here's one of my relations, and that makes me feel real good. I get along with all of them, but I mean, he's the only one that really does recognize that we are related, shirt tail. But why my mother and her dad, or her family never, corresponded, or, I don't know. I mean, that's just the way it was. Just like my mother's uncle that come through here and went to Canada. I mean, she'd say there was relations in Canada, but that's as far as it went. So why, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And like I say, by the time we got old enough to realize some of these things, they weren't here no more. Now this lady here that lives right out of town here, I mean, I know she's working on a family tree, but I have no idea if we are in that family tree. I don't know. And I never even asked my brother from Fargo. My brother from Wilbert is his name, and this lady here, her first name is Linda, but she's married to a guy by the name of Kletke, and they were classmates in high school, so they are still real close friends, But I have never, and one of these days when I get together with my brother, I'm going to ask him if he ever, found out how far she went with that family tree, So years ago, something like that seems like they didn't, I don't know. All I can say is, in my feelings, there was, let's say one brother made good, made money, and the other one was worthless or something like that, and I guess jealousy come in between, and they didn't correspond. That's the way I'm looking at it now. I don't know. I even have that in my own family, I mean, I've got three brothers living yet. 5 of them died. There are some of those things, that all I can say is jealousy.